indie game garden.
Alan Goode is a co-founder of the startup FloWHOA, the game studio currently making Scallywags, a tactical crew management roguelike inspired by FTL and One Piece, where players quest to become pirate legends. Alan helped found FloWHOA in 2023 alongside Mike Schmalz. Although he wears a lot of different hats at FloWHOA, Alan's main expertise is housed in his position as creative director, with over 20 years of experience working on mass-market AAA franchises such as Wayfinder, Warframe, Halo, Bioshock, SOCOM, and Company of Heroes. It's such an honor to have Alan on the show today. Let's jump right in. Well, Alan, it's an honor to have you on the show today. To start, I would love to hear more about your origins in the game industry. What compelled you to make games, just making them as a hobby? What compelled you to take it to kind of making it a career? And talk me through that career. How did it culminate in your work today at FloWHOA?
Yeah, well, to start, thank you very much for having me. It's kind of nice to be able to talk about all the work we've done. So this is a great start. For me personally, it's like my journey was unorthodox. I think a lot of people end up getting into game development in vastly different ways than they had anticipated or even projected or kind of thought about when it came to like how they were going to pursue their futures. For me, like when I did go to university, but when I went to university, I actually went for archaeology. Like I wasn't thinking about game dev at all. It always seemed to be like one of those things where, you'd have like in high school and stuff, you'd have people that want to be actors or, whatever the cool thing is at the time. Right now, it seems like everybody, like if you talk to my kids or other people's kids, everybody wants to get into like content creation and everybody wants to be a YouTuber. That's like, I want to be a YouTuber. It's like, that's terrific. Good luck. It's like, it's tough. It's going to be a grind as well. But if you make it, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I didn't really think about game dev, to be honest. It's like, other than I love playing games, I love to dabble, but I didn't know how to like make that a career or like triangulate my future in order to get into game development in some way. But I ended up going to university for archaeology and I did terribly. Like I think my first semester, I was lucky I didn't fail up. I partied way more than I should have. I didn't really take it too seriously. And what ended up happening is, and I was still doing lots of art. Like I was focused tons on art, but I was doing archaeology and my courses weren't going so well. What ended up happening is at my university, they ended up opening up a program that was at the time called New Media. And just as like, there was no real avenue. There's some schools in like, as a Canadian in Vancouver or Toronto, like Sheridan in Toronto, Vancouver Film School, that were very specific in helping in getting people into the game industry that were really focused. And then where I went to school in Southern Alberta, the university introduced a course that was kind of like well-rounded enough that you could kind of choose the direction you wanted to go within it. So a lot of people wanted to get into web development. A lot of them that were in the same program as me wanted to get into video editing and stuff like that. But there was a few of us that wanted to get into video games. And we took it pretty seriously, worked really hard, got really good grades eventually. After 2 years of partying way too much. And then what ended up happening is not just we, but me specifically, and some of my professors brought in industry people to talk to us at the school. And then they would give presentations. We'd get to meet them. And I hit it off with an individual that worked at Radical Entertainment in Vancouver, David Seymour. And he said, when you graduate, because I hadn't graduated, hit me up. And if you're interested, maybe we can organize something for you and give you a co-op. And I'm like, that sounds incredible. So when I graduated, I sent him my demo reel, and it was an art demo reel. And he was a designer. He was like the creative director or lead designer on the project. And then he emails me and he said, this is great, but I thought you wanted to be a designer. And I'm like, yeah, I do want to be a designer. Like, but I sent an art demo, right? And he's like, well, then how come you didn't apply to be a designer? It's like, I didn't know you could do that. I thought design was something you had to like build up into. It was like a high, like you didn't just get to become a designer. Anyways, what ended up happening is he did give me a shot, gave me my first break. I joined the crew. We were working on a GI Joe game at the time that got canceled as a level designer, and then from there, that was the first job, and then eventually when that game got canceled, our entire team or nearly everybody on our team was let go. So it was a really weird time in the early 2000s where it's like the studio kept the entire team. Most of us got let go. 3 months later, 6 months later, I can't remember, they hired me back, but I was working on a CSI game at the time. And I don't know if you recall the CSI games.
I don't know.
Or maybe the TV show.
Okay, yeah. I know the TV show. Were they like point and click type games?
Yeah.
Okay.
They were hidden.
I'm somewhat familiar.
Yeah, they're really good. So they were like those hidden object games, right? Where you get to be a CSI investigator with the crew of the TV show. So they would help you through all of these events and stuff like that.
Oh, fun.
Honestly, those games, I have super fond memories of those. I worked on CSI Dark Motives and CSI Miami. But the truth is like those were some of my best memories till this day in the industry, only because it was such a small team. Like the core team was 9 people. And I think back to that, and it's like that was a wonderful experience. It was a really great way to get my first published game. Even though it wasn't something that is super sexy maybe, or like Hollywood AAA, certainly wasn't those things. But man, it was a good time, and I met a lot of really great people. And so then from there, honestly, my career just kind of kept on moving forward, and I ended up at like Relic Entertainment, and then Slant Six eventually, then out to London, Ontario. But yeah, that's kind of how it started. But long-winded, that's how it started, and then there's a lot of like 20 years in between that and now. So yeah, different times, different days.
If there's one thing I've learned on Indie Game Garden, it's that there's no such thing as long-winded, because I love hearing about this stuff. So never apologize for those things.
Fair.
And yeah, super, super interesting to hear. And what got you then like looped into, being one of the founding members at FloWHOA? Like, I know that obviously it was with some prior work connections and just kind of things happening as you kind of ended your previous statement with, but walk me through kind of the present day.
Well, thankfully, like in London, obviously I worked at Digital Extremes, and you meet Digital Extremes is just absolutely full of really talented people. So there was a point where I was on a specific project at Digital Extremes. And this has been kind of been happening all over the place at a lot of studios. I went from being on the dev teams at Digital Streams, and I transitioned into on the publishing side. Digital Streams was going to try to expand their reach essentially by like publishing some other games in order to like, just have their hands in a bunch of different baskets, right? Makes a lot of sense. A lot of studios try this. Didn't work out for Digital Streams essentially. And what happened is our team got let go. I was one of those people. But at the same time, it was very much an opportunity as well to like try my own thing. I incorporated immediately after, knowing that I was going to try the indie dev route for a while. I knew it wouldn't be easy. It's not easy. It's very difficult. Everybody should know that it tends to try going this direction. I've had more than one day where it's just like constant panic attacks. So be ready. Super lows, super highs. But yeah, so then at that point, I kind of had a high level idea of what I wanted to create from the very beginning. So it was, and that is Scallywags. What FloWHOA's first game is going to be Scallywags, which is a crew management roguelike on a pirate ship, like very much inspired by One Piece and Zelda Wind Waker. Kind of more of those like not really your typical pirate fantasies. Like we didn't want to be compared to like a Pirates of the Caribbean or even Assassin's Creed Black Flag or something like that, right? We want to be more fantasy, more unique, more original. We don't want that classic pirate vibe. We want to stand out. But anyways, so I kind of knew from high level that we wanted to be different. We didn't know Scallywags was going to be Scallywags at the time. When I had thought about it, it was like pirate roguelike, very inspired by Faster Than Light is kind of like
Yeah.
what our high level vision was. And I'm like that. And the reason I picked that in like pirate theme, we're strategic at the time. Wasn't necessarily like because I had this brilliant idea or anything like that. It was like, what as a single developer at the time, thinking about it on myself, what is something I think from a scope standpoint is doable if I wanted to move forward, and then recruit a small team or whatever it happened to be. And it's Fast and Light is one of those games that is brilliant, but it's also like its scope was perfect because it's 2D, it's pixel art, it's two ships on a screen. So scope wise, it's reasonable, right?
Right.
I wanted to do 3D. I wanted to go into Unreal Engine in order to do something that could be our own update the graphics for us. We wanted something a little more visually stimulating from a 3D aspect. I still love Fast and Light, and I happen to play a ton of like 2D games, but it wasn't what I necessarily wanted to make.
Yeah.
So, but the scope seemed reasonable. Pirate ships, it meant that the majority of our environments would be like on the water. So you don't have to worry too much about creating lavish environments and temples and all of this stuff where players will walk through and stuff. I also didn't want to get into a genre where we would be facing a ton of competition that would basically, from a standpoint of like, you either have to be as good, if not better, in order to be even noticed. But we'll still hit challenges like that for sure. But I didn't want to deal with that sort of really intense competition for our first project. I
Yeah.
also happen to really love strategy games, so I'm like, maybe FloWHOA, moving forward, we could just focus kind of on making the best strategy games we possibly can. Crew management fits into that category, keeping the scope small enough that it would be actually possible to ship something. So that was from a strategy standpoint that Scallywags kind of made its first kind of thought process or kind of the spark in my mind. And then from there, I pitched the idea to Ryan Marr, who was in the same boat as me, trying to figure out what's next. What are we going to do? I'm like, look, I can't promise anything, like, because who knows, like, how these things are going to go. It's like giant risks all over the place, right? But I have this idea. I've incorporated. We can try to make this game and see how it goes, and cross our fingers and see like if we can pull this off. And he was game. I'm thankful he was game to give it a try, which was really nice. And then after that, I established a business partner, somebody on the team who's like really more savvy on the business side and the managing of a business, where I'm creative, but I've never had a business before other than incorporating this one. So a lot of that's brand new. And I feel like a lot of indie devs will also can really struggle on that aspect of the business. And to be honest, I would likely have been one of them, or I would have stumbled through it like majority do, simply from the standpoint of it, you have to.
Right.
But thankfully I didn't. So Mike joined me as a co-founder of the studio, and then we moved forward from there. We were lucky enough to get funding from Ontario Creates, which is an Ontario grant, which is fantastic, and that allowed us to hire and pay employees to make a very small team, and then come up with this particular idea in this project. So that's kind of how it all started. There's no like big fireworks explosions type of thing like that. It was very much like, I have a strategy. I have some individuals that are ridiculously talented and willing to move forward with me and give it a try. So I'm thankful for all of that.
Yeah, it's really striking to hear about not only, the obvious whimsy, and if you look at screenshots of Scallywags, you'll see that, and it's very colorful and bright, and you can tell that is, core to the idea. But there's that creative side and that kind of whimsical, almost like, spontaneous side to the idea, I can tell. But it's fascinating to hear, you as kind of one of the progenitors of the idea, like thinking so strategically from the outset about, scope, about marketing, about how it's going to set itself apart in a very crowded marketplace.
Yeah.
But having those almost be married in a way that feels very, it feels natural, as far as like, while you are saying, I really love FTL, I feel like, working some kind of real-time strategy into a roguelite would be a great way to make our game. You're also doing it, 3D, so it's differentiating. You're also doing it, you're thinking about how to differentiate it from the other pirate games on the market. And what comes together, having played some of the earlier builds of Scallywags myself, is this very unique product, I think. And I think the elegance to the execution of the idea does lie in the scope ultimately, because if you were setting out to make something that was even an inch closer to something like Assassin's Creed Black Flag, like you were saying, like that's where it can really get out of hand. But when you are on these maps that players are familiar with from obviously smash hits like Slay the Spire, and these pretty light real-time elements, but that are, scattered throughout some of the most popular games in the world. Like, I do think it adds up to this formula that does feel at once familiar, but also, pushing in a new direction. And I was wondering, like, how did that sense of trying to, find the niche in the market, was that a product of just being in the industry and kind of understanding what sells, or being a player and understanding what you enjoy? Or was there some new research involved, since you had mainly worked in a more, larger studio context before going indie?
Yeah, there was no any market research that was done was by me after the fact, like when trying to discover what
Yeah.
to make. It really was like, what games do I enjoy that I would like to make? Even like, I think about like, and we deal with scope creep all the time, despite the fact that we have started to create something that we specifically in order to keep scope down. It's like, it's still always an issue. You always want to do more. You always want to pack in more. And then I get super jealous because I hear about the guys at Fast and Light, and I think they developed their prototype in like, or their initial game in like 9 months or something like that. They had 9 months of burn. It's like, we got to make something in 9 months. I think we're at 2 years. So it's like, and we still don't have something on the market. So those guys are like very, very good. But no, then I ended up taking, because I really enjoy Fast and Light, and I wanted to make a strategy game because I feel like strategy, and these are educated guesses, but also based off of a lot of research and information out there. When it comes to strategy games, they obviously like kind of really attract a core audience, like an older audience, an audience that's willing to spend, which is important when you're an indie studio. You need to make sure that you have a proper market, or a market exists that's actually going to purchase your game in the first place. But it's, you don't have to deal with a lot of, it's harder. I also think that it's less people making them, likely. That's more of a feeling. And there's less competition from a standpoint of like, there's a lot of platformers out there. There's a lot of first person shooters out there. Not a lot of people are making strategy games, though. Survival is starting to get more popular. Base building type of games are getting, and those can fit into the strategy context in certain implementations, right? But in general, I felt like it's definitely less crowded, and the market is strong. Like the people that play strategy games, they play strategy games, and they are willing to spend. It's really good. From that standpoint, that was really important. But I also took a look, because again, going back to Fast and Light, I took a look at Fast and Light, and it came out in, I think it was 2011. Don't quote me on that. It came out a long time ago, and when it came out, it did very well, had all this press, but there hasn't been a whole lot of like games similar to it. As of recently, Void War just came out, and it is very, very much like Fast and Light. Also very fun. I enjoyed it very much. And then there are a few other games that have come out that are adjacent. Abandoned Ship comes to mind. There was a few crew games out there by a company called Runner Duck. They did like Space Crew and Bomber Crew, games that are adjacent. Like they weren't necessarily roguelikes or roguelites, but they were like crew management, and you have a lot of that. So we paid attention to how they were doing, what their sales look like, using analytic websites to try to figure it out, like if it's worthwhile. And
Right.
they do all right. They do pretty good, but there isn't a whole lot of competition. But they're fun. So I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, well let's give it a try.
Yeah.
And that was kind of where that came. That's kind of where, from a strategic standpoint, where that came from. Then I started doing a lot of research. Then I started digging in to all these individual games that have some overlap or similarities, trying to figure out what they might have grossed on Steam, for instance, in order to come up with a plan to determine like how much I think, if we really hit it out of the park or just even kind of do okay, how we could do. And the goal is really just to have a healthy studio, not to become rich, right?
Right.
There's no delusions of grandeur here. We're
Yeah.
not going to become super huge no time soon. We just want to make a good game that people like, so we can continue to make good games that people like.
Yeah, a refrain I hear on this show that is really inspiring to me as a game player and making me make sure I continue to, sample games from across a variety of, I guess, popularity levels is like pretty much 100% of the folks I've interviewed have said they're doing the commercial thing in order to be able to make more games. It's never like I want to be the next Stardew Valley and make millions and millions of dollars. It's just like, if I can spend the rest of my days like making games and paying rent, like that's great. And I think that's beautiful.
To be fair, I think everybody would like to be Stardew Valley.
Exactly.
It's just like you have to be reasonable. It's
not
right?
realistic.
Yeah.
I just looked it up. FTL came out in 2012, so you were close. You're probably playing demos in 2011, but one of the things I'm interested in additionally with kind of the workflow at FloWHOA is your kind of, a lot of the titles on your CV are as, creative director. And I was wondering, like, what was the difference between being, a creative director at a larger studio in that kind of context versus what you're doing now, which I know is, collaborating with Ryan, probably checking in with Mike, and then managing your team of like contract artists that are working in Unreal. It must be a lot smaller of a context, but I'm sure there is some crossover as far as like ownership and vision. So I was wondering what kind of the difference between those roles might be.
I think so. When you're doing creative director or design leads at big studios, generally it can be, depending on the studio, there could be a few, right? It's not necessarily, that wasn't necessarily my experience, but I have been on games where I was a lead designer, but I wasn't the only lead designer, right? It's kind of like art as well. You can have multiple like lead environment artists that are responsible for different sections of the environment. That could be very true as well when it comes to really big studios. So you are a lead or creative director, but there might be a few, or there's a design director, a creative director, and then there's a bunch of other kind of titles that can. Every studio is very different, right? And how they decide to their hierarchies and how they determine what is what and where it goes. I would say the big difference is like you're managing a lot more people when you're in a huge studio or a big studio, and you're not doing as much of the work yourself, right? Yeah. So I'm a creative director at FloWHOA as well as a co-owner, but it's like, it's more, I'm in the trenches actually like every single day,
right?
Creating content every single day. That was not the case when at Digital Extremes a lot of the times. When I was on Amazing Eternals, there was a lot of development, a lot of tuning, a lot of balance work that I would do. But when I got into the publishing side, it was literally just it was way less of that. It was like a lot of evaluation, a lot of like playing the games, giving feedback, providing like references and support in order for those teams to be successful, right, and stuff like that. And then it went on to this. But they're different just from the standpoint of like how much actual work you get to do versus, and that is just a requirement of small teams. Like when you're in a small team, there is no rest for the wicked that way, right? It's like you're not only trying to establish direction and vision, you also have to be in there, like literally like putting those ideas and thoughts into the game.
Right.
A lot of times, because there is no, like, I might be creative director, but it's not, there's not a whole lot of people to direct.
Right. Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Like Ryan's in there too. We have other employees because we have artists on the team and stuff as well.
Yeah.
But it's really collaborative most of the time. And that's the goal and hope. Sometimes you have to be like, this is like creative director. This is the vision. This is what we have to try to aim for. But generally, most of the time, it's like everybody has a lot of autonomy, which you don't have as much in a big studio, right? You can be a creative director, but there's still someone above you. So unless you own the run in the studio, everyone has a boss, right? So
right. I imagine it's not like a black and white, like this is way better than one is way better than the other. I'm sure there's pros and cons to both. But as far as like your situation now where, you do have the panic attacks of like, is this going to work? You do have the more responsibility of just like being on, the front lines and living and dying with the project. Like, but you also have so much more control and you do get to do the work. That was something that I was just talking to a developer called Dave Lloyd last week who made the Drifter. He's an Australian developer, and he was talking about how after working in the industry, he was like, I'm going to try for a year to, go indie. And he said in the first week, he was like, I'm never going back because I can do all of the stuff. And that was kind of what like interested his brain a lot more and made him feel a lot more engaged than just, working as part of a larger team on like one or a few parts of the project. I was wondering, like, what do you prefer just personally? Like, do you prefer being in a little bit more of a structured environment? Or would you rather have what you have now? Like, would you ever want to go back if that opportunity were there, just hypothetically?
I would like to make the opportunity rather than diving back in. It's tough because I think ideally there are things I miss, right? Yeah. So it's like there are things that were really nice, but mostly it's like ideas like pre-COVID, the way things used to be. Right. Not necessarily going back now or anything like that. If that was to ever happen, I'm fortunate where I don't really have to worry about that too much. But it's like I think about my early days, and I think about the younger employees on our projects and how awesome it was at the time to like go into a studio, and it was super fun, and it was cool and fresh, and then the colleagues that you make that you see every day, then you go for drinks with on the weekend. Those are and even like not even when you just first started, but even like at DE before COVID, it's these things would happen, and I do miss that a little bit. I'm not going to lie, the work from home is like incredible as well, and our entire studio is remote, right? So nobody has to go into a studio or anything like that. But I do pine for it a little bit sometimes. And I think it's a part of the fact that you end up being like, when you're working from home, you're alone all the time. It would just be nice to have some social interaction with somebody occasionally, right?
Totally.
Other than my wife. My wife is my work partner most of the time. Not that she's on the team; she's doing her own thing, but she works at home as well. But I mean, sometimes it'd be nice just to go in and see some people. And then if I have a problem, then it could be like, the person beside me be like, hey, I'm struggling with this issue. Can you take a look at what I'm doing, and and figure out why I'm so dumb? So that
Yeah.
way you can get there. But other than that, it's like, I think at the end of when it was like COVID, anyways, when that hit, it was very much like the experience was all work at home. It was pretty great. It's still
Yeah.
pretty great. Like, there's like being able to work remotely has tons and tons of perks, but you do miss some of those things. But yeah, I think that's. But if I ever had the opportunity to go back, I don't know about that. Like,
Yeah.
I'd have to. Right now, that is not even. Thankfully, not even an option. I can do this, so that's
Right.
good. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing that you're doing is so important, and I feel lucky to be able to highlight it and to get hands on with some of the early builds. What's your
Yeah.
favorite part about playing these early builds of Scallywags? Like, I guess the core of this question is, I would love to hear about your experience of like being kind of the creator of this idea in large part, and then seeing it all kind of come together now in a way that, while it's not finished, it's like very playable and pretty polished. Like, what are some of maybe the things you weren't expecting that you feel when you play it? What are some of the things that are working? What are some of the things you want to improve upon in future builds?
Yeah. I think my favorite parts are the things that have nothing to do with me. It's like
Mm.
it's the work that everybody else does that I get to see. I like. It's always fun to come in, and we have morning meetings every single day. We have a morning. We call it a stand up, but everyone's somewhere else, and we're just
Yeah.
talking through Discord, which is what we use mostly to coordinate. And just everybody gets to share what they're working on, and some of the stuff that gets created is super cool. Like, we have. And when new effects come in, it's awesome. New sound effects that highlight how, like, make things sound more exciting. We have art, like new characters get dropped in with new animations. It's just like, this is really cool. Or like, we have right now, we're working on in the game. You can travel from. You have like a treasure map essentially, right?
Hmm.
And you can travel on. You get to click on the island you want to go to next. You don't really know what's going to be there until you arrive, but there are taverns, and there's taverns and outposts, and they're both kind of stores, and you buy different things. But we just got this tavern art that is so cool, and you see it from the outside. You don't go inside of a tavern or anything in our game, but the tavern looks like a giant. It just looks like a giant barrel that's been carved out, and somebody put a handle on the side of it, and a little gully. We call them Scallywags, but he's a seagull man, gets to
Yeah.
sit inside of there, and he's the shopkeeper essentially. But the fact, it's just such a like a fun hero prop essentially that players get to visit and then get to purchase their stuff and move on to the next battle or whatever it happens. But just seeing that stuff roll into game over time is always exciting, and always makes me happy that we've kind of taken the journey on to try it out. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's the big stuff.
Yeah, beautiful. It highlights for me hearing you talk about, you know, the niche within the niche almost, where it's like, it's not like at this point, every game or most indie games are roguelites. So it's like, how can we be
Yeah,
within that? There are
yeah,
tons of pirate games. How can we differentiate ourselves within it? And um, just hearing about the description of this new kind of tavern art makes me want to drill down on like the stylistic choices in the game, because um, there it's pirates, but it's so much like, if you just think pirates, I some people might think gritty, some people might think more like Pirates of the Caribbean style, but this, and some people might think One Piece. It is more like One Piece, but it's kind of still its own thing, where it's like almost it reminds me of like what kind of a like pirate theme park might be, but it's also kind of like a dreamscape, where it's like some things seem like they're in miniature. There are all these, different, like seagull creatures. You're riding on like a frog spirit boat.
yeah,
And I love that it is the type of, very light story, but still story nonetheless, told mainly through environmental storytelling, that like only a game could do. Because I think while you might be able to have, all these animated characters or whatever in like an anime or something like that, like seeing the power of, the spirit within the frog boat and like getting hands on with that, or like understanding how like having an interaction with like a jellyfish pirate is going to be way different than having an interaction with like like a seagull pirate or a crab based pirate. I'm not exactly sure what they're called, but it's really beautiful, I think, how it's coming together, and I can't wait to see how it continues to. I was wondering, like, you've obviously worked on in the landscape of games as it's changed over 20 plus years, and I was wondering what are some reflections from that time? Because I think it was fascinating to me to even hear, you saying like there was that major rift, which I think there was in a lot of industries between, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic. But I think there was also just like a rift in like the collective confidence in the games industry. I think there's always been, at least during your career, some skepticism as far as like job stability. Like I think even in the early 2000s, you were mentioning this pattern of like retain a whole bunch of staff, lay them off, hire them again. It's almost like I think Jason Schreier describes it really well in Blood, Sweat, and Pixels as like, or Press Reset is a better example of one of his books of like, it's almost treating this position of like salaried worker at a game studio as like contractors. So there was that before, but now it seems even more splintered and even less confidence in kind of this AAA studio setup. And so I was wondering if you had any reflections just on like your own career or any kind of advice maybe you could pass on to aspiring game makers here in 2026. Would it be just like, you should just go indie and try that because there's not much left in the AAA space, or like maybe try to get in with a smaller studio or anything along those lines, just as far as hearing your thoughts as someone who has been a part of this unprecedented, I think, time in games.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think back to my even the earliest days in the industry, I never felt personally stable. Like none of my jobs ever felt stable, and I think maybe personally that was always very motivational from a standpoint of like I worked my butt off, but in an unhealthy way as well. And I think that's part of the strategy, right?
Yeah.
It's like they keep you not on purpose maybe, but knowing that like what you never know what the next project's going to be. Oftentimes that's because maybe the studio doesn't know and they can't make promises. So it's like when you try to get that kind of like just an idea so you can feel a bit stable, it's really difficult to come by. So I never felt stable, but at the same time, back when I first got in the industry and I was let go and then hired back, like not too long after, that was kind of like those were golden years as well, because you could get as long as you had one game under your belt, you were in demand. Like there, and I started my career in Vancouver, right? So there's lots of video game studios. A lot of people, you could walk down the street and get your next job, right? It's like you could, like everybody was hungry for anybody that had any sort of skills in creating video games whatsoever, right? And that was one of the things is like people, so not only was there no stability for staff or individuals at a studio, the loyalty from the standpoint of the staff was also dwindling as well, because everybody knew is like, as soon as I publish this game and this game gets out the door, I'm probably not going to get much of a raise and or a promotion at my current gig. If I want that, I'm going to have to go down the street, right? So this is always kind of a thing. I don't know if that exists as much now. Like, and there's been some ebb and flows where this like the industry kind of has its ups and downs. And then right now, there's been like, at least North America wise, there's lots of layoffs and stuff. I was affected by that as well. So it's and I think part of it is like the immense amount of hires that happened during COVID. I also think part of that, so maybe like these studios are slimming down a little bit, but also now there is like a lot of the dev is moving to I think Eastern Europe or Asia, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even though there's been a lot of layoffs in North America and the Western studios and stuff, there is still a lot of hiring happening. It just doesn't happen to be around here necessarily. That's not to
Right.
say that this will continue. Who knows what the future holds, right? I hope at some point that we get to a point where we're growing the studio, and I'll be actively able to hire as well. And it's my goal to hire local and keep the economy going that way, and for us to be healthy with local people. Um, yeah, so I think, and if you're like an aspiring game developer, depending on what you want to get into, some positions I think are going to become more difficult to get than they were in the past. But I still think there's lots of opportunity for every sort of talent and discipline. And I think if you're hungry enough, what ends up happening is like I end up talking to a lot of kids that want to get into game dev, and or now maybe they want to get into YouTubing or whatever. But it's like
Yeah.
those that want to get into game dev, I my number one advice is just to get involved in making content as young as possible. So if you're in high school and you feel like this is like a dream or something you want, then and you want to do art, then download Blender and start making art now.
Yeah.
So before you go to college, or if that's a direction you want to go, you already have an upper hand, right? You're hungry. You're showing your talent early. A lot of times it's like what college and university tends to be for young people are great networking tools. That's what it was for me, essentially, in the long run, right? Networking tools, but they don't necessarily teach you drive. They will get you connected. They will teach you maybe some of the useful applications in order to make content, but it's all personal drive, right? So at that point, it's like you don't necessarily need a university or college for that aspect of it. Uh,
Right.
I know lots of people that get hired that never went to university college, but the university college will help because you'll meet other people that are ridiculously talented as well, that are going to potentially get jobs before or after you. And those people, if they like and respect you, those are connections. So it's like, then it's this type of deal, but just get involved early. If you're into code, be coding now, like in high
Yeah.
school or whatever, right? Yeah, just start developing your skills before you actually go to college, university. As all these guys I talked to is like, we wanted to get a game. So I'm like, oh, what are you making? Nothing yet. I'm going to start when I get to college. I'm like, you don't need to wait.
Yeah.
Like, start working on it now.
Yeah, I think that's really smart advice, and it's really surprising to me how like simplistic a lot of the advice I kind of compile on this show is. I was talking to a games writer, Charlene Putney, a couple weeks back, and she was talking about she had done hiring at this small writing shop in Denmark, and also Larian, like kind of running the gamut as far as that sector of the industry goes. And she was saying it's super surprising. 80% of people applying like didn't even attach like a portfolio type thing.
Yeah.
And she was like, so it was really easy to skim off the top 20 applicants because they were the ones doing things. And I think that's something that can really easily get lost in our current era of like LinkedIn, 2-click submit your
Yeah.
resume applications, is like doing the stuff and being good at what you want to do will always stand out. So I think it's way less about, and it seems like you can validate this with industry perspective, like it's way less about how many applications you're sending out potentially, and way more about the quality of the portfolio you're including with that. And that reflects your
Yeah.
experience getting your first job, it sounds like.
Yeah, yeah, but it totally is, because it's about the grind. It's like even my kids, that if they want to be YouTubers, I'm like, it's literally about the grind. It's not, and talent and charisma, or like those things are very, very important, right? But it's like you have to learn how to do it before you get into these other situations. So it's like just take, and then maybe you'll discover you don't like it.
Right.
Then you can figure out something. Game dev is the same way. It's like, yeah, you just got to try. Then get experience early and get it. That just gives you an upper hand.
Yeah, it's this classic adage too of like, especially with games, it's like being good at games, enjoying games,
Yeah.
thinking about games, all of these things are different from the actual work of creating them.
Yeah.
And I imagine that that is a frustration of hiring managers or what have you when it comes to folks that they're looking through, where it's like, I've loved games my whole life. It's like, okay, like, what are you doing? And playing games is really important. I do think staying
Yeah.
connected to the art form is a key piece of it. But in the end, I think it all comes back to A, having the portfolio, but B, like, pretty much every industry still, which kind of blows my mind in this era of automation, like, it's about people and talking to people and getting connected with people. And it seems like your career and what you enjoy is a testament to that. So,
Oh, yeah,
um,
I agree with you completely.
yeah. I was wondering also, I think it can be semi a pitch, but I think, like, I want to hear for folks who are purely game consumers. They don't want to be, they don't want to be making games. They're just like, maybe they're strategy enthusiasts, like you were talking about earlier. Maybe they're just folks who enjoy playing indie games. What message do you have for them coming from your current context of, like, we're this indie studio, making this very, clearly scoped game that is whimsical, that we want you to enjoy, that we don't have, delusions of grandeur about. Like, what would you tell those folks or wish that they could know if you had a megaphone about, like, their consumer habits or potentially, like, the types of games they're playing? It could be Scallywag specific, or it could just be, someone coming from an indie context.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is probably no. It'd be like, we're people too. Nah,
Yeah.
nah. Well, we're not really people. No, no. I think I think it's obvious. And I think everybody hears it. It's like, especially for indie studios, our lifeblood, especially when you're early, and the majority of us are on Steam, right? Are going to
Yeah.
put our stuff on Steam. The thing that is, if you see something out there that you kind of like or are interested in, putting a wish list on anything is like the most powerful thing you could do for an indie developer, an indie studio you can imagine. It's like it is by far the most meaningful thing that somebody could do. And it's kind of like all these other like and subscribe, right? It's like
Right.
it's very much like that, right? So it's getting those wish lists up are lifeblood for an indie studio. And to break in, it's not just because it you can use some algorithm to determine based off of my wish list what kind of sales am I going to get. That is true, but it's not actually necessarily the most important or the only thing. It's very important, but a lot of times where these indie studios might have a really cool game, but they need extra support. They need extra support, and that means a publisher. In order to get a publisher interested, you kind of have to start to show that there is interest in your project itself. That
Right.
means as an indie dev, you have to take that project and go and basically do guerrilla marketing yourself in order
Mm.
to create interest, in order to show there is interest. And wish lists are one of the things that a publisher will look at. So for good or bad, it helps. It helps not only even if you wish list with the intention to buy someday or whatever. What it actually means is that helps to gain the attention. It gets Steam algorithm takes it into account. It starts showing it to more people, which is useful. So it can and then publishers might notice you, and or you reach out to publishers and be like, hey, we're getting this kind of interest. These are our wish lists, because they don't want to take on a whole lot of risk themselves. They want to ensure that there is a potential to actually make revenue off the project with you as
Right.
well as a partner. It's not just so that one wish list can snowball into like other people wish listing through Steam algorithms, through whatever it happens to be, to a publisher saying that you're worthwhile. So that's not necessarily for us personally, but for any indie dev, if you see a game that is interesting, like and you plan on buying it, wish list it too, because
Yeah.
that's by far the most important thing you can do for them.
Yeah, that's great insight. I was wondering, with your current context of making FloWHOA's first game, is it like, what do you find has been the most powerful driver of wish lists, or basically folks interested in your game? Is it, face-to-face interactions? Is it social media? Is it through, some marketing through the grant you're doing? What's kind of drawing people to the game as far as you can tell?
I think we've had a little bit of success with Instagram and Facebook and stuff. But those tend to cost money, and
Right.
it's not. And it's hard to. The ROI might be good, might be bad. It's hard to know. We haven't invested a whole lot into that, to be completely honest. From
Totally.
my perspective, the place that actually seems to have the best payoff, and I enjoy when I have time, is Reddit. I love Reddit, and Reddit is like, those are engaged individuals that are interested in what you're doing. They're
Yeah.
constantly they are market makers from a standpoint of they're always looking for what's the next cool thing as well. So that's
Right.
a good one. The other, I find, like a lot of the other social platforms that we post to don't really, we still post to them, but don't really move the needle. X doesn't do much anymore.
Yeah.
I enjoy X, but it's not bringing in wish lists, or it's not generating a lot of attention for the project, for instance, even the studio. But yeah, Reddit. I really like Reddit.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. I haven't heard Reddit mentioned on the show yet, so that's an interesting perspective, and I think it's something that, as you've mentioned, it's almost less about the number of people at certain stages and more about the number of people who are really engaged and excited to learn
Yeah,
more. And it does seem
yeah,
like finding the right r slash whatever on Reddit
yeah,
could be a huge boon for an indie studio.
yeah. It's a challenge. If you know any good Reddits,
For
I should be
sure.
posting to, and like, let me know. I'll go tackle
Yeah,
them.
I would have to do my research too, but if I stumble upon any, I'll send them your
Yeah.
way. As we get to the end of the interview here, I was wondering, this is a question I like to ask most folks who are obviously, putting their heart and soul into their games. What's something that keeps you whole and feeling nourished by life outside of games? Is it family stuff? Is it another hobby? I was just curious.
I don't have time for hobbies, but it's definitely my family. Honestly, it's like, I think about how powerful my family has been in order to allow me to even do this.
Yeah.
It's like, I have a great wife. If it wasn't for her, I definitely would not be doing this right now. Right.
Mm.
So it's like, I'm extremely, extremely lucky in that respect. And it's just like, yeah, it's like, and with my kids, they are my joy. So it
Yeah.
is. And I get like, when I take them to their little like extracurricular events or stuff, that is the moment where I get to kind of relax and
Yeah.
breathe a little bit, because otherwise I'm always on my computer, I'm always working, and that is my time I get to get away. It's rare, but it's
Yeah.
like, like, there's an hour every day I get to do that. So it's like, that
Yeah.
would be, that is my, that's my go-to. That's the best part. Yeah.
That's beautiful. This show was started to kind of try to find creators and find games who are kind of pushing back against apathy, which I think is a very common emotion online these days. And games like Scallywags, I think for a number of different reasons, there's like an earnest feeling when I play them. And I think that can come from, so many different places, since you have team members with so many different identities and backgrounds and day-to-day experiences. But I love that idea of, having this very intentional space where you find breath even in a very busy life, and that's involved with your family and supporting your kids. That's beautiful. Before we sign off here, I wanted to ask you, are there any like important dates or milestones, even if they're not a specific date, with Scallywags? Like, I know you have a demo release coming up, or a Steam page release coming, or Steam page is already out, but a demo release coming up. And then any ideas on like when the full game might release, or any milestones in between?
Yeah, we don't have a release date yet I think we're going to hit early access first. It's not going to be like,
Yeah.
we're going to do early access and move on from there, but we don't have a release date for early access yet. There's a bunch of fests that we're targeting right now. The big one is Steam Ocean Fest, which we are going to release our demo. That's May 18th. The thing, it's we'll see how that goes. It's always interesting because those kind of fests on Steam are a lot of times they're really focused on game sales. Like if you're all these ocean themed games, it's like that's a good opportunity for you to discount your project, right? So it'll be interesting putting out a demo during that to see how we can compete within like this entire environment of like games that are being discounted a little bit, but that's exciting for us. That's a really big one for us to get involved with the Steam Ocean Fest. It was lucky that happens, but big demo coming out May 18th.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I will. I'm gonna shift around my release schedule to pin this like right around that time, and then I'll do all the promo I can with my very small audience to help. But it sounds exciting too because Ocean Fest is a large enough thing that I think Scallywags will stand out as far as, you have a colorful kind of off the beaten path indie to kind of just sample as you go about picking out your other discounted games. So that sounds awesome.
Thank you.
Congrats, and I wish you all the best with that release. And with that, Alan, thank you so much for your time, so much for being on today. And yeah, nothing but gratitude. Thanks for spending the time.
Thanks for having me. This was really fun. And good luck with the rest of it. I'm looking forward to hearing this and much more from you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And that was Alan. So honored to have had him. He's obviously a very busy person, kind of wearing so many different hats for FloWHOA, and working on Scallywags feverishly to get it through the finish line. If you're listening to this, it's likely around May 18th. And the Steam Ocean Fest is going on, which you heard Alan mention in the interview. If you have any interest at all, which if you're listening to this point, I bet you do, in checking Scallywags out, go give it a wish list and go try the demo, which is out on Steam right now. I'm super excited to have gotten to test the game before its demo dropped here, and also be promoting this alongside FloWHOA, who is just a studio full of awesome folks. I've already interviewed Ryan Marr, who was on this show, one of my favorite interviews to do. He's been super supportive of the Indie Game Garden just as a project, and I would love it if our small little community could give back by wishlisting Scallywags, going and playing it, and just enjoying these interviews with folks who make the game. It means a lot to me to talk to them. As far as my gaming outlook, it has improved since last week. Last week I was talking through a little bit of burnout and just reflecting on things beyond games and how games can feel so small in the grand scheme when you think about life and death and all those philosophical topics, which I am wont to do. But also that's why breaking through internet apathy and playing games that have this earnest quality, this joy that I talked about with Alan in our interview earlier, is so important, because day to day, that's what we have. We have the joys, we have the little things that make us happy, and that kind of keep us going. So games are definitely one of those things for me. And I have been messing around with Twine a little bit. As you can probably tell, part of my ulterior motive for making this show is just hearing inspirational things from inspirational people who make games. And I've always kind of tinkered around with making one myself, and I've talked about making things with PowerQuest a little bit and messing around with that, which was Dave Lloyd's tool last week. Twine is obviously has been around for so long to help make kind of visual novel style games, and I've been messing around with it, making a little detective game in there called Harvey and Bleak. It's with these kind of anthropomorphic animal detectives in a world full of wild open source imagery that I can source and kind of patch together in Photoshop, and it's been fun. I don't have any commercial designs for the project, obviously, but it's been a fun way to write and kind of role play as a game developer, if nothing else, with Twine, like the simplest possible tool, still giving me fits, of course, with my less than technical mind. Another fun thing to announce here on the show is that I have committed to law school. I'll be going to the University of Richmond in August, hopefully studying something eventually after my first year, since first year curriculum is all the same for law students, something related to games, and hopefully helping indie game developers in my eventual job that I get. That's my dream job. I think for lawyers, it's kind of the sort of thing you might have to put in 5 years of work at a place you don't necessarily align with the mission to get where you want to go, but 2026 and the possibilities are endless. I feel like going into a private practice right out of school to help indie game devs could be maybe as viable as ever and as falling flat as ever, depending on the opportunities that come up. But that's why it means a lot to me to be interfacing and networking and just making friends with all these game developers on this show to hopefully help them with their projects. It's fascinating to me, perhaps the niche or help I could give, not only from a legal perspective, but from like incorporating a business perspective and helping with contracts. And Haley McLean, an exemplary games lawyer, for her work, which sounds really awesome. She just helps kind of small devs with their publishing agreements to kind of not get screwed over and understand the contracts that they're buying into. So something along those lines would be great with law. It will provide me a bit more direction, and I definitely will still be making this show. I make a number of different podcasts currently, and this is the one that I don't want to go the most, along with Game Joy, a podcast I make with my partner Jamie, and Moon Fork, which is an actual play Monster of the Week podcast that I just make with some friends. So I'm hoping none of those three will go, but if some of them have to go, this one will not be it. And I look forward to continue making it and continue providing the context that I do get with law school there. It'll also mean I'm back on the East Coast, so while I will be farther away from some of the folks I've had on the show and unfortunately farther away from the community I've built here in Seattle, I will be closer to some of my favorite folks in games. Christian Donlin, who's over in Brighton in the UK, my favorite games writer. Obviously, the great folks at FloWHOA who are up in London, Ontario, and a number of great people. So if you're on the East Coast and want to say hi, one of the things my eyes have been open to is that networking doesn't have to be gross and funky and weird and corporate. It can just be saying hello and having friendship and real connection actually form the basis of it. And if any business comes out of it, that's great. But I think I love people a lot more than I'm willing to admit to myself sometimes as an introvert. And it does charge me up to talk to people about things that I do love. So if you're into games at all, if you're into any kind of media, and are interested in talking about that in any capacity, I would love to. So I'll be over in Richmond, Virginia, starting in August for the next 3 years, and I'm looking forward to that next chapter. Some of the games that have been helping me kind of smooth this big transition in my mind and find those little moments of rest, as I talked about with Alan in the interview, have been Scallywags, honestly. Playing early builds of the game and writing down some notes has brought me a ton of joy this week. Scarlet Hollow, which has been an ongoing fascination of mine. And Titanium Court, which I'm not sure if I've been in the complete correct mood for it, honestly, but I'm fascinated by what AP Thompson is trying to do with the game, and so we'll see what happens with that. I feel like it could fall flat in my mind, but it's been something I've been coming back to little by little, and I'm excited to see where it goes. So there's that. I've also wishlisted a game whose developers I'm hoping to have on the show. It doesn't have a release date yet, but there is a demo on Steam right now. It is called Ambrose Niflet, and the Gleaned Bell. It's this beautiful, like, handmade looking detective game that reminds me of my early fascination with Detective Grimoire, which I played on the iPad with my dad growing up. And yeah, it's kind of a low stakes, cozy detective adventure game thing on Steam that visually I just can't get enough of. So go check it out if you like that kind of thing, and stick with us. We'll have another interview for you next week, and I'm excited to bring that to you. Thank you so much for being here. See you next time. Bye.